All right, you can stop right there. How many are familiar with the types of space that we all observe? What we're doing right now is a social space. You're very comfortable with that, are you not? Okay, so we're in social space, 12, 15 feet away. So if I see Elaine right on the street and I say, hey, Elaine, she's going to say, hey, and we're fine. Or if we're in a big room, it's great. Now, if I move closer to Elaine and I get between 4 and 6 feet away from her, we're in social space. So if we're at a business meeting or whatever, I can stand here and that's not too uncomfortable, is it? But now if I do this and I talk to Elaine this way, can you see what's happening to her physiology? Yeah. It's getting very uncomfortable because I'm in an intimate space. And if you want to freak somebody out, get an intimate space and then stare right there. And it just really messes with somebody, because if I look at the bridge of your nose, I'm not looking at either one of your eyes, and it really messes with your head when you do that, and it'll cause your body to just freak out. Okay, now, how do we get away from that in a social environment? Because a lot of times in a networking meeting, you're forced into intimate space. If I stand this way with you, it's not nearly as bad as I'm still in intimate space, but I've given her an out. She has an escape route where I can't, if I'm here, if she goes that way, I can step here. If she goes this way, I can step here. So she's trapped. But if I start here, she can get away. So she's not nearly as likely to go in fight flight. So when you're in a networking environment, especially, thank you, Elaine. When you're in a networking environment and you're involved with close proximity with people, especially a woman, keep bladed a little bit, especially if it's somebody that you don't know really well. Because if you put them in fight flight, you're going to have a very difficult time getting anything done. Yes, sir?
We've done a presentation on how to work a room when you don't know anybody. And that was one of the things that came up. And you always ask yourself, can I insert myself into that group over there? When they're face-to-face like that, you do not insert yourself into that group. If they're standing like this, like what James just mentioned, that's an open invitation to come and insert yourself in the group. That's one thing we learned.
Mm-hmm. Now also, the blading is nice when you're forced into that, as long as you're having a good open conversation and you want to get that person to start being familiar with you. Because if I have my feet pointed this way and I turn my body this way, I'm showing you that you've got my attention, but my feet are telling you that I'm ready to go that way. So I'm ready to get away. Now there's a difference in that type of body language, and if Patrick, if you would volunteer for me, please. If Patrick and I are having a conversation, and we're in comfortable social space, and we're having a conversation just like this, and all of a sudden, I do this. What happened? I've done one of two things. Either he's made me really mad, or I'm trying to get away, or I've lied. Backing up is a deception indicator. If I say something like, your company is really great, and I do that, I've just lied. Because I've distanced myself from the statement. I left it here, and then I backed up. But also what happens is, if we're talking about something that's very controversial, and he says that, and I back up, and I stay on the ball of that foot, where's my police officer? If I step back and I'm on the ball of my foot, right here, what have I done? That's not a good place to be. Because my hips are turned at about a 45-degree angle, I'm back on the ball of my foot. This is called, in karate, this is called the front stance. In boxing, it's a boxer stance. In shooting, it's the weaver stance. I am ready at this point to strike. So if you see a person do this and you don't know why they did it, number one, you need to pay special attention to this body language, because this is dangerous potentially. So if this happens, you want to watch what happens with my hands and if they change. Because typically, if I'm talking with my hands down when I'm here, and I back up, and I keep my hands in the same place, you most likely aren't in danger, especially if I roll back on my heel. I'm trying to get away from you. But if I'm back here, and my hand gestures come up, because in karate, your hands come here, and boxing, your hands come here. The other thing is to watch the eyes. If I start target staring, if I start looking at you right there on the chin, and I'm back here on this foot, buddy, you're getting ready to get clobbered. So, you want, or if I cross, if I'm gesturing and I cross one arm over, because this also is a defense stance in karate. I can strike you here, I can strike you there. So there's a lot of things I could do. I can also kick you because my hips are rotated back. So I'm at maximum power when I'm sitting in this position as far as a physical strike. Thank you, Pat.
So we go ahead and shoot them?
Well, that's the other thing that you got to be careful, is because if I'm very aggressive and I step back this way, that's the other thing that a law enforcement officer knows. I'm either going to fight you or I'm going to pull my pistol, and I want you away from my pistol because I don't want you to pull it.
In Florida, Terry, you're allowed to shoot him.
Yeah.
In Florida, yes.
Or Texas, probably.
No, seriously, in Florida, there's a law that says you can shoot him. If you think your life is in danger, you can shoot him and kill him.
In Mississippi, we didn't need that law at all.
Now, last week they never fight the
Because
body.
every law
That's right.
enforcement officer carries a throwdown, I know that. My father-in-law lived there.
I did.
I have his throwdown.
I promise you, I did. All right, now, the likelihood of you getting slugged in Middle Tennessee in an environment like that is very minimal. But people instinctively will make those movements. They don't even realize they're doing it. So if you have a client or a colleague that starts putting themselves in that type of position, one of the things that you can do to defuse that is put your feet side by side and just open up your palms. And when you do that, that's a completely non-aggressional position. That's a very reasonable, so let's come together and reason position. So if he's doing that and I just do this to him, then now he knows that I want to engage in a conversation, not
Right.
in a, you know.
He has no weapons. His fists are not balled.
It's caveman, but it's truth.
What about blading in that position too?
Well, that is a form of blading. When you rotate your hips and back up.
If you're on the receiving end of that, is there, other than the palms?
The other thing to do, and I think you'll agree with me, is you get distance.
Okay.
If a person does that and they're mad, if you see the eyes narrow, you need to watch, because when you narrow your eyes and you target stare, you're basically turning the f-stops down on the lenses of your eyes, and you're very, very focused.
Depends on your objective.
Right.
If your objective is to save the solution, find a solution, you might take a half step back and do the open conversation gestures. If you want to escape, get rid of it, deflect it, then you blade and escape.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Gentlemen, ladies, this is what we do instinctively.
And that's what I was going to say. This is something that a person will naturally respond to, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. The amygdala is triggered because this is a primitive, like you said, this is caveman behavior. So your amygdala will trigger, and you'll go into fight, flight, and you won't know why. Or the person that you're trying to talk to, if you blade like that and show that aggression stance. Now, if you're just in a social situation and a person starts to blade you and starts to turn their feet, they're done talking to you, and they want to get away. But that's one of the way that the psychology and the neurology all works together to form the basic types of deception detection. Your pupils will dilate. Your pupils only dilate for two reasons. Either you are afraid or you're excited. You're attracted to someone. If you're very attracted to someone, your pupils will dilate. It's very hard to see, especially with a dark-eyed person, unless you're very close. But if you watch a blue-eyed person, and they get very excited or very scared, their eyes the blue will almost... If you shake someone's hand at the beginning of a meeting, and you notice the temperature of their hand, especially if you know that it's going to be a controversial, it's going to be an aggressive situation where you're going to interrogate someone, say money has been stolen from a business, and you're checking the people out. You shake hands to begin with, and you feel the temperature of their hand, and then when you get done with them, you shake their hand again. If their hand has gone cold, most likely they've gone into fight-flight, because the blood has flowed out of their hands, out of their feet, and into their core and the large muscle groups to protect them.
Well, if it goes reverse, because like me, I've had social situations, I notice my hands are cold, and after the meeting, I don't feel like my hands are cold anymore. So it maybe means anticipation, I was afraid of what might be happening.
You might have been, and then you relaxed as the meeting went on, and blood flows back into your hands. These are very difficult deception indicators. I'm going to go through some really quick. All of this will be on my website. I'll put the entire presentation up that I had. We got a little distracted there at the first. So what are some things that you can look for in a conversation that would indicate deception? One, and this is the most accurate form of deception detection that there is emblematic gestures. What is an emblematic gesture? An emblematic gesture is a gesture that I make that needs no words to explain it. If I do that, everybody in here knows what that means, right? If I do that, Everybody knows what that means. Emblematic gestures in a culture are very, very accurate. Now, you've got to know the culture, because if you do that in certain European countries, you're going to have friends you don't want, most likely. Yeah, you might, but it's not a good idea. You know, and what's that?
You do this in Germany when you're tutors.
Yes.
That means there's a three-pointer in the NBA. I mean, that's...
Well, in Germany, that's 3. They don't do 3 this way. They do it that way. So all of these emblematic gestures, one of the most popular ones that everybody knows is the leakage of the middle finger. You just don't see it. But if you watch for it, you'll notice it. People do it all the time. That is a great plan.
That was on Seinfeld. Did you ever see the episode with George with the waitress?
Well, see, that was actually a double, a double indicator, a double deception indicator, because I made a statement and then I touched my nose.
If you touch your nose with any finger,
If you're under a stress situation, if I ask you a relevant, threatening question, and you say, yes, that's true. No, not likely. But if you've got to baseline a person, and you've got to know. If a person is sitting there doing that all the time because they got allergies or whatever, you just don't use that as a deception indicator, because you know that their nose is bad. Yeah, if they do it all the time. If a person is if they're a continuous lip licker, then you can't use that as a deception indicator. If they swallow very hard, you can't use that as a deception indicator. But if they don't normally do those things and they start, what deception indication is about is noticing change. Change in physiology, change in speech patterns. People who do things like the infamous Bill Clinton speech. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Monica, or Ms. Lewinsky. Okay, you could write a book on that segment of his speech, especially when you add now I want to tell you one more time. He qualified the statement. He used a convincer with I'm going to tell you one more time. And then he gestured one direction, looked the other direction. He used distancing language. I did not. We use contractions naturally. If a person, and Bill Clinton, being from where he is, he uses a lot of contractions. When he stopped using contractions, that's a major indicator. If a person that you talk to normally, they use contractions. Now, academics a lot of times don't. They speak very specifically, very emphatically, and they write very emphatically. This stuff works with written documents as well. But if a person drops all the contractions, big indicator. Then he took her out of the statement, that woman. Then he put her back in, but he put her in at a distance. He didn't say Monica, my intern. He said Ms. Lewinsky. So there were about 5 different deception indicators in that process. What we don't realize is that your emotions generate your gestures. So when you get in an excited situation like he was forcing the gesture. It actually was coming from his conscious mind rather than his unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind is about 1.5 times faster than your conscious mind. This is where emotional leakage comes from. This is what we see. So when he starts doing gestures, he does this chopping gesture, and it's not in sync with his words. You can pretty much be assured that the person is not telling the truth, because they're generating the gesture out of time with their words. They're forcing the gesture. And when they're in overload, they'll start chopping, and they'll be all over the place, and they won't know that they're out of sync. They'll think that they are. Then also looking away from where he was gesturing. If I'm going to gesture, if I'm going to gesture to you, I'm going to make the gesture. But he was looking at the camera and talking with his hands over here. So he was putting himself away from that. Richard Nixon, when he said, I'm not a criminal, when he said, I am not a criminal, I'm not a crook, I am not a crook, and he did this. So he left the lie at the podium, stepped back, crossed himself. So he protected his vital organs and stepped away from the lie. These are all easy to detect once you know what they are. A lot of people think that crossed arms means that a person is being defensive. A person can cross their arms just like you because they're comfortable that way. But now I will tell you that studies have shown that when you're in a closed body posture like that, double crossed, you'll learn about 40% less than you will if you have an open body posture. Naturally, just your body, you'll receive more if your body posture is open rather than closed. What's that?